predictions, ecological predictions that, Florida would be underwater by 2008 and 2012, and all these things have developed. You can take a glass of water filled with ice cubes, and as the ice cubes melt, does the water all of a sudden jump up so high that it runs out of the glass? It doesn't do that, because the ice itself displays a certain amount, and when it melts, it stays practically the same. So all of the ice melt up in these areas is not going to increase the coastal waters by all that much. But now an asteroid impact creating a tsunami would definitely cause some problems.
Actually, on that same topic, Russia developed a bomb. I think it's called Pandemonium is the name of the bomb, something like that. Or it's called the Doomsday Sub. But basically they launch a nuke out on someone's coast and they'll detonate it underwater, and it creates a huge tsunami, and then it's they've tested it out and they said that it has catastrophic abilities.
Yeah, we have
I've actually heard somebody recently saying that we were going to have an East Coast tsunami, probably of that nature, July the
12th,
13th, 11th,
13th,
7/11.
7/11.
That's what was so funny about it. Is they said because it was one of our kids' birthdays.
You never know.
One of these guys that claims to have, visions from God and everything.
At any rate, the point is that, we have all of these biblical signs that things are wrapping up. And that should create an urgency on the part of God's people to become more prepared, better prepared to not only face those challenges, but of course, grasp tighter the hand of God, because He's the one that will carry us through, etc. And that's probably the main thing we want to bring out, that trust in Him. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, it's interesting. The one thing I want to point out when we're talking about the 6,000 years, I know that the Jews called to this year, the year 5783 AM, which is since creation, which is more than 215 years shorter, but Earth span, as opposed to what we calculate to be closer to 6,000 than that, like 200 years by closer. That the difference being that how long were the Israelites in Egypt? Was it 430 years or 215? So there's two different theories, that they were only in Egypt 215 years, and they spent another 215 wandering in Canaan. So ever since they received the promise, Abraham received the promise. Do you count from there 430 years, or do you say they were in Egypt 430 years? So there's two different camps. That's where the discrepancy comes in the Jewish calendar.
Yeah, I lean more in the 215 area, simply because
if you lean 215, that means then we're closer to the Jewish calendar of 5783. It means we'd have 217 years before Christ would return. I don't think it's 217 years. So, but if you go with Exodus 12:40, that declares the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years, then we would be more like 5990 something.
No, for 57 already. If the Jews have it at 57, you add a couple hundred years to that, then you're at 59 and change.
Right. Who's saying that's the 410 versus the
right?
So the
410 would take you over 6,000. Or the 430 would take you over. The reason why I believe that is because Abraham, I think the promise to Abraham and his journey from Hebron there was when he was 75. He started out with Lot when he was 75, and I think it was 430 years from that time to the time of the Exodus, the self same day. I think he left Hebron on that day, the same day, 430 years earlier. But anyway, that's here nor there. It's going to happen when it happens. So, okay, so my take is that we see all these signs, we hear all these things going on. We should expect all of this kind of chaos to ensue and be somewhat disruptive to our thinking and to our lives. But yet, by having a relationship with Christ, we have a peace that passes all understanding, right? So circumstances out there mean very little because we still believe God is in control. God is allowing things to happen to bring about the conditions that enable him to return. And the important thing is that we're in his hand and he's guiding and directing us. Okay, so let's move on to chapter 41 of Genesis. Chapter 41 of Genesis is our study time there. We've been talking about, of course, the story of Joseph since chapter 37, and 20% of the book of Genesis deals with this single story and with this particular event surrounded by Joseph, which is the 11th son of Jacob. And pretty phenomenal. Like I said, 20% of the book deals with really the development of the nation of Israel, not only physically, but as we'll learn in the next couple chapters, spiritually as well. Okay? And I want you to understand something. The reason why this is important, this is setting the foundation. Of course, Joseph was a type of Christ, and we know that the development of the Jewish nation with the 12 tribes, that one of the tribes, the tribe of Judah, would lead to the manifestation of the Messiah. Okay. But I want you to understand that's the first coming of Christ, right? So you have all this development of the Jewish nation, physically and spiritually, leading to the Messiah, first coming. At the end of time, which is where we are today, you have the development of the 144,000, right? The Bible talks about 12,000 out of each tribe, right? In Revelation chapter 7. So then you have the parallel is that you have
Her husband took her somewhere.
before Christ's second coming.
Going out, down the hall. Yeah.
Are you going out for lunch or getting here?
So
Do you want me to put you there now?
Yeah.
You know
so
what?
before you have
Can I
the
eat
second
here?
coming.
You
Go ahead, just mute
Please?
that. Yeah. Before you have the second coming, you have the development of the 144,000 physically and spiritually prior to the second coming. So I just wanted you to see the parallel of that as we continue to kind of get more into the development here of the nation of Israel. So this is it's really fascinating to me, all of the strings that God had to pull that will cause the development of the nation of Israel. Remember, the promise goes back to Genesis chapter 12, where he promised to Abram, I'll make of you a mighty nation, etc. Well, that hasn't happened yet, right? There are only 70 souls in Canaan, right?
Right.
Now, there's still only 70 souls. Of course, Joseph is down in Egypt at this point, and he's just become the kind of the prime minister. But chapter 41, I believe chapter 41 is where we're starting, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and beheld he stood by the river, and beheld there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine or cows, real fat-fleshed, and they fed in the meadow. And beheld 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. So Pharaoh is having this dream. This is 2 years after the baker and the butler had their dreams and had been released from prison. Of course, the one died 3 days later, and the other one was restored. The butler was restored. And so 2 years down the road, Joseph, who was asking for a favor after interpreting those dreams, still has not heard any response from that. Of course, the butler forgot all about it. So here Pharaoh has a dream, and behold, it says here, the ill-favored and the lean-fleshed kind, verse 4, there did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kind. And so Pharaoh awakes. So he has this dream. 7 cows come up. They're just, they're grazing there. They're really full, robust. And then 7 lean, sickly looking cows come up, and the ill-favored ones eat the 7 well-favored. Okay, so he slept and dreamed the second time, so he goes back to bed. And, that's happened to a lot of us where we've had a dream, we wake up, and then we go back to sleep again and dream the second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good, or well-formed and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. So they were kind of shriveled by the blast of the east wind. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 full ears. And Pharaoh, of course, woke at the end of that, and behold, it was another dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that can interpret them unto Pharaoh. This seems kind of like a regular thing that God does. We find also in the book of Daniel, other places, how God provides these dreams. And supposedly the wise men are called in, the PhDs of the air, the magicians and the soothsayers and whatnot, people that have set themselves up to be kind of
Important,
special, important, yeah, right.
equivalent to the scientists.
Calls them in. It's just amazing how God can confound just very easily these kind of folk with even a dream, a simple dream, whatnot.
Well, it's interesting that
or even writing something on the wall, but with an unseen hand, as it was in Daniel. And people are astounded, and they don't understand. But of course, God gives and provides wisdom to those that are His, and He gives them clarity and insight that others do not have. And again, this is God working in a very particular manner. Well, obviously, Pharaoh is beside himself. You can imagine he's the leader of Egypt at this time, would probably be considered a superpower, right?
Sure.
So go ahead.
Easily. I said easily Egypt was considered a superpower.
Yeah. And so now he's, of course, the butler has been restored, the cupbearer. And he, verse 9 says, then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. So he, all of a sudden, as Pharaoh is probably relating his dream to those close around him, and of course that he's called in, other people to hear the story as well. The butler all of a sudden remembers, hey, you know what? I had a dream one time a couple of years ago. Pharaoh was enraged or wroth with his servants, and he put them in the prison there in the ward, in the captain of the guard's house. He said, both me and the chief baker, and we dreamed a dream one night. So he starts to tell Pharaoh his experience, right? We dreamed a dream in one night, and I and he, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams, to each man according to his dream he did interpret. So all of a sudden, here's the butler telling Pharaoh, hey, you know what? There might be a resource, another resource that you haven't considered.
I think I know a guy.
I think I know a guy, right? It came to pass, verse 13, as he interpreted to us, so it was, me he restored into my office, and him he hanged. So just like Joseph told us, I was restored as the cupbearer, and the baker was hanged. All right.
Right.
So Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And of course, he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. So imagine, you
Yeah,
know,
you don't want to bring a filthy dude who's been living in prison for
yeah, they
a couple
probably,
years now.
yeah, I'm sure
Sure he
they
was right.
bathed him, they got him all presentable.
Yeah.
Yeah, got him presentable. That's actually what God is trying to do with us.
Bring us out of prison and clean us up a little.
He really is, right? When you go into Revelation, we're considered the bride of Christ, right? And what does the bride do on her wedding day?
Thanks, Freddie.
Everything.
It's ready.
Right? She's getting, in fact, that's what the Bible says. She's making herself ready, right? And that's of course what's happening here with Joseph. They're making him ready to come before Pharaoh, the king, if you will, right? And God's trying to do the same thing with us. He's trying to get us ready to be presented as.
It's an interesting
So-
parallel that you've almost got this kind of idea, like with just thinking of the example of Esther, they prepared her for how many, was it a year or?
12 months.
Yeah, 12 months. Yeah. So she went through a whole year of pampering and cleaning
Training.
and everything else and
Training.
training and etiquette and all this other stuff.
Exactly.
With Joseph, it's just kind of this quick, the king really needs someone to interpret the dream. He says, you're the guy, and they just, throw some water on him, shave his face, and give him a couple of new servant clothes.
New
Just say,
threads.
Go on in. But
Yeah, some new
But-
threads.
what that kind of tells me is that there's kind of an aspect to those who prepare themselves over the long term for the king.
Right.
And then there's also those who are prepared in haste for the king.
Last minute.
The last minute people who are,
Yeah.
rushed in to play their part.
And yeah.
You think
Okay.
they gave manicures?
And of course, there's also a parallel in Matthew 22 where the king comes in to investigate the wedding guests, right?
Make sure they have the right
Make
clothes.
sure they're well, make sure they have the right raiment on, and what does he do? He finds
Someone not wearing the
someone
right
not
clothes.
wearing the right clothes, and that person is cast out.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
it's important to have the right clothes on.
When meeting the king.
Okay, so Joseph gets himself all ship shape. I'm sure everybody's kind of excited about the possibility here. So Pharaoh says unto Joseph, eventually, I've dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee, I've heard the rumors that you canst understand a dream to interpret it. Right? And so what does Joseph say? Does he say, oh yeah, man, I got this? What does he say?
It is not in me.
It's not in me. Yeah, I don't have that ability. But God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. I mean, how important was that right there?
I bet
Oh,
you
yeah.
that was also different than all the other wise men who tried to interpret Pharaoh's dream and walked in and probably was like, oh, it's this and this and this, and it could mean this, or, whatever. Joseph was probably different because he also said, well, I don't have the answer, but my God does.
Yeah, that's an important consideration. And you'll find that a true believer is always going to point to the king. It's not me. It's not anything about me. God gives me life. God sustains me. He protects me. He watches over me. He forgives me. It's about the king, right? And if I have any wisdom, any knowledge, it comes from him. Okay. Now I just contrast that with the attitude today that has been developing. We just saw, just before everybody came in, we just saw an 11-year-old who has a physics degree. He ended up getting a physics degree in 1 year
Wow.
at the age of 11. I didn't catch his name. Rose may have caught his name. But 11-year-old young man took a 3-year course in 1 year, right? Got a physics degree. And he believes that humanity it's not possible for humanity to live forever. Right?
It is now possible.
It's now possible for humanity to live forever.
Lawrence Simons.
The 11-year-old does?
Yeah, they think the kid's name is Lawrence Simons.
Yeah, he's from Belgium or someplace. I can't remember.
Yeah, sure.
At any
We don't
rate,
make him that smart over here anymore.
So anyway, I'm saying, science today has
Yeah, he wants to use
philosophy.
his abilities to make humans immortal.
Yeah, so.
Show me he's still 11.
Yeah, of course, when you're 11, you think, man, I got,
Wow.
my whole life ahead of me.
You already feel immortal. He has no concept of what mortality is at all.
Right, exactly.
I
Are you
still,
sure there's not some involvement from the World Economic Forum?
yeah, I'm sure he's got a job there.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think so.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure he's more than a doorman.
Just for those people though that belong to the world, yeah, the World Economics. They're the ones that want to live forever.
Yeah, well, obviously there's a mentality out there and a philosophy out there now that says that we can do this. We are smart enough now to actually accomplish this apart from God, you talk about being deluded, you talk about being deceived. That is total deception, right?
Right.
I mean, does that indicate at least that the Bible, because I mean, the Bible says that we were confused in language because together we could have done anything essentially.
Well, I'm sure that along the way, God confounded, there's a reason why God confounded the languages at Babel, right? The Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And it's probably because insight was passed over
From pre-flood.
from the flood event. And I think that we have come back to that place. The Bible says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the Son of Man comes, right? So I think that they were at the place where they were experimenting with amalgamation and with the idea of
Extending their lives.
Well, obviously immortality is not possible, but I mean, not without God, but it's not, I guess it's like you said, it could just be a really big extension on life or something.
Well, see, the philosophy that's out there today really says something different. It says it's very possible because what we can do, we can upload your mind into the cloud. We can give you new parts. We can make you a new physical body.
We can print you cloned organs.
We can print you clone organs. We can make you a new body, and then we can download your mind back, download you back into your mind, into a new
It's
mind.
like a sci-fi movie I was watching.
Oh yeah, well, very much sci-fi type thing.
Yeah.
And you can just keep repeating that over and over again. If you,
Well, we
if you
say it's
watch
sci-fi, but it's not that unrealistic either,
yeah.
as long as you have infrastructure like the cloud.
Well, Back to the Future, when you watch the movie Back to the Future, which is what, 1980s movie, Back to the Future, what does he come back? He comes back and says he just got an upgrade, tells Marty, yeah, I've been getting an upgrade. They
Like
new parts.
DeLorean or
No, the Doc.
Doc?
Yeah, he had just gotten, new parts or whatever.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that particular part of it, but
Yeah.
I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, and this might be far-fetched, does anybody remember Dolly the sheep, the first thing that was cloned?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could consider that living one forever.
I think, most people try to think of it as like your consciousness. Like, if you just cloned yourself and then that aspect is independently conscious, then it's like, well, you're kind of vicariously living forever.
That's like having a cat, having a kid.
Yeah, it's literally having a child.
Right.
It's like, well, I'm kind of living forever through them.
For
But
them. The idea of living forever has to be your conscious mind,
yeah,
personality,
you
your
existing,
character.
being
That's
conscious
you.
forever.
And if they can just keep putting that, programming that into a new body,
Something
then
that
they technically think they can do that.
Isn't that
something
what
that-
AI is trying to do?
That's AI is doing a lot of things, not just that, but it's definitely part of it.
AI is trying to become more sentient on its own apart from people. That's kind of like what people are scared of, is AI becoming its own.
They're kind of trying to make AI like a deity that you can use. Like that's
Sort
kind
of,
of an all intelligent, all capable mind that you can tap into.
Okay, so if you imagine the scene there, here's Pharaoh's probably sitting on his throne. You probably have guards there. You have maybe some other counselors there. You got the butler there. And then you got Joseph standing there, probably just looking like a servant, but cleaned up. And he says, it's not me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. God's going to God's going to settle you down, help you figure it out, where you're troubled about it. God's going to give you a peace about it. So Pharaoh said unto Joseph, he starts telling him the dream. Behold, I stood upon the bank of the river. Behold, there came up out of the river some kine or cows, and they were fat flesh, well favored, and they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ill favored and lean fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. So these are
Really ugly.
really rank looking animals.
How many
right?
dreams does Pharaoh have?
Yeah, 2.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was any correlation between him having
This-
like 3 dreams or something, or
This is the first one. So the lean cows and the ill-favored kind did eat up the first 7 fat cows. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them. So in other words, it didn't make them fat. It didn't improve their condition at all. Okay. But they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. And so he wakes up. And then he says, I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk full of fat. So it's the corn that's, really prolific there. Behold, 7 ears withered thin and blasted with the east wind. So they were kind of real ragged looking. They sprang
that's
up.
interesting.
And this is the second dream. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. So if you can kind of picture, the ears like Pac-Man, and just eating up the other ears. So he tells them all of that. So then in verse 25, Joseph says unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. What God is about to do. Okay. Now again, all of this that's unfolding is about the development of the nation of Israel. I know it's hard for anybody to see the connection at this point, but everything that's taking place, all these strings, all these things that are happening, the dreams, Joseph being in prison, waiting there for 2 years. I mean, all of this is about the development of the nation of Israel. Okay. So Joseph basically says it's one. God has showed you what God has showed Pharaoh what he is about, what God is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years. The 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. The 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them as well, they are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. Okay.
Did they pause for you too, Debbie?
Yes.
Yep.
Same
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was just me. I still heard some voices and I heard you guys talking, but I was like, everything just stopped.
Looked like it stopped on the host end there.
Yep.
Is this the beginning of the famine?
It seems that way.
The Bowen famine. Oh,
Also, you have,
Oh, they're back. Here they are.
Yeah, I was about to say we dropped off there for a second.
Dewey.
We stopped at the beginning of the famine.
All right, so you've got, and as well, you have 7 years of plenty. And I'm just wondering if the entire world had 7 years of plenty. But certainly Egypt did.
It was obviously regional.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's interesting about the east wind too.
it extended at least 200 miles away, to
Yeah.
all the other regions.
Yeah. Okay, so once you're in famine, the rich, prosperous years are forgotten, right?
Right.
And certainly if you haven't made preparation, And this says something to us about making preparation for the meantime, right? The famine time, right? So this should say something to us as well in terms of preparation. The plenty, it says in verse 31 there, the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of the famine following, for it shall be very grievous. Very grievous. And we'll talk about, what possibly God could have done to bring that all about over such a long period of time. And for the dream, and for that dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. So in other words, he's telling Pharaoh, God wanted to make sure that you got this message, so he not only gives you it one way, but he gives it to you twice, which is when something's repeated like this, it adds emphasis to it, right?
I think it also makes it memorable for him to actually think about it. Because I was thinking, why did he wake up and then fall back asleep? He woke up and obviously probably thought that was pretty weird. I guess I'll just go back to bed. But
Right.
having the dream a second time made him go to his interpreters, made him go seek out what the dream meant, because he said it's not a coincidence that I saw it, 2 times in a row in 2 different ways.
There's no question he was anxious about it. The Bible says he was troubled. And so,
Yeah.
when you're troubled, you call in your
Expert.
counselors, right? The experts, the scientists, whatever.
It also sheds light on God's desire for, regardless of who, that they have the opportunity to prepare. So, Joseph is used to explain it, but emphasizing the fact that it is God who has given that ability to him, but also yearning that Pharaoh likewise would come to the knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, what we're talking about is the development of the nation of Israel. So all of these factors that you just mentioned, Susan, are necessary to get us ultimately to that point.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So Pharaoh has this dream twice. Now he doesn't give him a dream where he has famine first and then plenty, right? There's no way to prepare for that, right? So it's God in his wisdom provides the plenty first. And again, all for a reason, right? And he tells them it's because the thing is established by God and God will shortly bring it to pass. So he's telling Pharaoh flat out, this is, what he doesn't care what he believes. He doesn't care what his philosophy
This is happening.
understanding is, how he's been educated. He says, God is going to do this. God is letting you know. He's giving you the heads up. Okay?
What you do with the information,
Right.
is up to you.
God's going to bring it to pass. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh, and then he goes right into the answer or to a solution,
Right. He's like,
or at least a suggestion of a solution, right? Now, therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. He doesn't say to Pharaoh, well, Pharaoh, look, this is what you need to do. He says, set somebody up. This is an important aspect of the whole thing.
and you got lots to do already.
He's
Delegate it
suggesting, this shouldn't be your role to do this. You should designate someone to do this. Let Pharaoh do this. Let him appoint officers over the land. Take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. So here, Joseph walks into a situation, has no knowledge of it. All of a sudden, not only does he hear the dream, not only does he interpret the dream,
He says, here's how much we probably need to grow for
Here's-
the next 7 years.
here's what you need to do to prepare for this, right? So this is absolutely astounding that just instantaneously almost he comes up. Now maybe Pharaoh said to him, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so Joseph was prompted, right? Seems like he probably would have been prompted.
Right, that he wouldn't have spoken out of turn. And
Right. So he probably said, well, man, what are we going to do?
well, and what's interesting too is that his experience in Potiphar's household probably also prepared him for a lot of this as
All
well,
of that.
because
All of that.
he was in charge of making sure that things were grown and
Even being in prison.
handled.
Even being in prison. In prison, you don't have the
Resource
plenty. You don't have the
management.
plenty. So you got to really you have to really manage the resources that you have in a prison.
You know, that sounds, it's funny because they say that too. I mean, obviously, I guess you're kind of taking it that way, but his time with Potiphar, right, was blessed, and then he
And
went to prison, and it went
that
to
was his
famine.
7 years of plenty,
Yeah,
and now he's in the famine part. So he's gone through on a personal level the plenty and the famine, right? Is that where you were going, Sam?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so he says, take 20%, 20% during the plenty, store it up. All right, store it up.
Double tithe.
Yeah,
Yeah, a double offering.
take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. It says, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Now, for those that are here in our little area, you can look over here at our chart here where it says the pyramids.
Mhm.
You'll see that
I think it's on the lower pictures.
yeah, the lower pictures there, the lower left is a complex that Joseph set up. That's at Saqqara. And at Saqqara, a picture just above the monitor there is a picture of one of the grain bins. And probably if that monitor was out of the way, you'd probably see another picture of one of the grain bins there. But this says, so we know that that's Saqqara. Now, Saqqara is about 45 minutes to an hour below Cairo. So it depends on what taxi driver you get. But between 45 minutes to an hour. I've been there in 45 minutes before. It's a guy, a fast taxi driver. But there's a series of grain bins there that feed into a central bin, and
The archaeologists there, the antiquities people say it's burial places.
burial tombs. Yeah, well, everything in Egypt's a burial tomb. In fact, if you go to Saqqara, you'll see a kiosk up, like a sign when you pull into the area there, and they'll say this tomb, this tomb, this tomb, this tomb, this tomb. They're not tombs; they're grain bins, and they feed into
People in
a
Egypt don't
series.
do anything but die.
Yeah,
Lined with a series of
it would feed in.
chutes. So as the grain could be fed down a chute into a container in different directions, they had all different cubicles you could come into to
A
get
big
what you were getting.
self-feeding.
I don't know if there's a picture behind there that might show the cubicles.
No, that's in the museum.
No, there's one up there of the cubicle, I guess.
There's the better ones.
I don't see it.
Looks like a box. Is that what you are?
That's a grain bin.
Yeah.
Okay. Any rate, yeah,
I think I've got
we've
some-
been in those areas where they had the cubicles where people would come in and order and get their grain allotment, whatever. But it says cities. So
Right.
Saqqara is only one location.
Right, well, it makes
Uh,
sense. You'd have to distribute it because it's like, well, you can't
Right.
have everybody
Come
going to
in
the
one
one
place.
central part of Egypt all the
Right.
time.
So there had to be other areas that have not been discovered in Egypt that they might call tombs that are actually a series of grain bins. There's probably some in Cairo, Alexandria. There are probably some,
Across the empire.
all across the country there that haven't been discovered yet. And that food, Scott, you ready to do that, buddy? You ready to go over there and find some grain bins?
Yeah, do it. Yeah, I went to Saqqara 1986. Was I when I was there last? Yeah, and I didn't know anything about the discoveries or anything like that. And yeah, I read all the signs about these being tombs and whatnot. And I was just a young Boeing engineer over there doing some in-service flight testing on Egypt Air 767s, and I was just had a lot of free time, so I was
Wow.
exploring the country. But yeah, that was pretty amazing to be
Yeah, the
able to.
museum they didn't actually set up until after, I think, 2004 or 5.
I went to the Cairo Museum, and King Tut was there when I went there.
They actually have a museum now in Saqqara.
Oh yeah, I haven't been to the museum in Saqqara.
Yeah, now what's interesting there is you'll find the coffin. You'll find the coffin there on display that was supposedly Imhotep's coffin, but it's empty. And the Egyptologists can't figure out why is there no body There are no remains in this coffin.
Why would they have taken him?
Why is there nothing in here?
Because they've all calculated.
Because-
Timeline.
Well, not only that, but remember that Joseph said, take my bones out of here, right? So Joseph told him. Anyway. So all over the country there, cities, Joseph is suggesting that they do this. The food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, verse 36, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all of his servants. So again, everybody's there listening.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a great.
Yeah, man, everybody's nodding. Hey, I think we ought to do this. Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? So not going to find it amongst the wise men and soothsayers, etc. So Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God has showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Maybe the guy's 30 years old, a young man.
He's entering the prime of life.
Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all the people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. So basically, he becomes the prime minister of Egypt, control over everything,
Direct representative.
all over the
Like in
entire
Atlantic,
country. In the throne, Pharaoh, of course, is greater, but he's the number 2 guy. Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, put a gold chain about his neck, made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. Pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, that must have been an experience. You just kind of come out of prison that morning. And,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
you get a fresh shave and a shower, and you go and you say some things. And now you're being paraded through the
Now you're
street.
the prime minister of the country.
How quickly things can change.
Yeah, when God's making things happen, they don't have to. I mean, you can see some giant steps here.
Right.
Okay. Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphath-Paneah, and gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph went out also. He gets not only be prime minister, but he gets a wife out of the deal.
Yeah.
So you're in prison one day, the next day you're prime minister, you get a wife, you get a big raise,
And a wife of one of
you
the
get a
priests.
palace.
It's a big
Yeah.
deal because
Yeah.
it gets really venerated their priests.
Absolutely. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, went throughout all the land of Egypt. So, I mean,
So basically, he said, take a tour,
yeah,
go set up, go do some surveys, figure out where we're going to build all this stuff and do all this stuff.
yeah. It says, and in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls. So, God is miraculously increasing the harvest here. He gathered up all the food of the 7 years, which was in the land of Egypt, laid up the food in the cities, the food of the flood, or the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much until he left numbering. So it got to a point where it was just too great, or it was without number.
When you think about how much food they stored up, and then when the famine came, it was so bad that for miles around there was nothing.
Well, it was enough food to feed nations for
Yeah.
years.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a ton.
So Joseph
You
gathered
can
corn.
see why they made Imhotep a god in
Yeah.
Egypt.
Exactly.
Because he had this foreknowledge about this famine and saved
Right.
all of these people. He
Saved,
was a hero.
saved the nation. He actually saved the world, in a sense. That's why he's the type of Christ. And unto Joseph was born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar's priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, he had made me forget all my toil and all my father's house.
And it's funny how babies can do that.
Yeah. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years, that's something that all of us certainly could experience when we come to the Lord. The past is behind me, forgetting those things that are behind. I press toward the mark, the high calling, Christ Jesus.
Well, it also shows he was
So-
pretty good at coping too.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense that like, a lot of people end up with all sorts of problems from traumas they face and whatnot, but it's like this new phase of life just has made him forget all the misery he just endured for the last 20,
17 years.
almost 20 years,
Yeah.
going through prison and slavery and all this stuff. Just
Falsely accused.
the
yeah.
past is behind him, and now like
Yeah.
this is the greatest. You can't get any better.
His reputation is destroyed. His life is
Go from
destroyed.
being a prisoner to being second to the king.
His reputation is built up and then destroyed again.
Second to the king, but
Yeah.
first, in terms of the country, ruling the country. He rules the entire country. Right. He doesn't have to go to Pharaoh to say, can I do this? Can
No
I
one
do
can lift
that?
their hand or foot
Right.
without his say so.
Only in the throne is Pharaoh
He
higher.
says jump, you say how high.
Yeah. Okay, so he has two sons.
Make him ruler over Potiphar then.
Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if Potiphar had also been there to put in a good word for him as a servant, and there's,
Yep, could have been.
just to be like,
Somebody
yeah,
to
like
trust.
when he ran my household, everything was fantastic. Like
Didn't have to know
never
anything.
didn't have to worry about it at all. And it's just,
Okay, so the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt that ended. 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. For Pharaoh said unto the Egyptians, go to Joseph, what he saith unto you do. And the famine
not my
was,
department.
notice this, the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. So there's a degree of famine over all the face of the earth. That's now,
It may not mean literally the whole world, but the world that was known
check
then.
it out.
The word.
Yeah, over what was inhabited.
You want
As
the
far
word
as they
for it?
could go in their travels and whatever.
But the way it doesn't say even inhabited, it says the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph, of course,
So this Jewish guy gets hauled off to Egypt and becomes the prime minister and saves the whole world from starvation.
exactly. Yeah, and again, all of this is happening, right? To develop the nation of
Of
Israel.
course, there wasn't a Jewish.
We
person.
can't quite see the connection yet, but all this is taking place specifically to accommodate the development of the nation of Israel. Okay, and that'll come a lot clearer in the next chapter of the reason for that. The famine has to be.
It's also one of those rare times when the political leaders of a nation heed to the voice of God.
Yeah, absolutely. After himself having the dreams, when something like that happens, or when you talk to somebody and all of a sudden you get in your gut, that what they're saying to you is true.
Mhm.
And Pharaoh has to be smart enough. To be Pharaoh, you got to be pretty sharp anyway. But when Pharaoh's going through this encounter with Joseph, Joseph is telling him, this is not even me. I don't have anything inside of me that can help you, but I am connected with the God of heaven who can help you.
And it shows that
How may I direct your
that the
call?
Egyptians, despite the fact that they were heathen or pagan, they respected
Respect.
their gods.
They
And
respect
they
it,
respected Joseph's God.
respected
I mean,
Joseph's God.
to them, gods were gods, and you don't mess with gods.
right?
Well, and if this God could accurately interpret this dream and provide a solution, and
Says
none of
here,
the other gods were doing that, and plus his dream, they worshipped a cow god and they worshipped the Nile and all this other
They
stuff.
had
So it's
a
like,
God, a fish god.
right, these were things that provided sustenance for them. These are things that provided for them that they're worshiping, right? The
the river,
river,
the cattle.
the sun,
the wheat.
yeah.
They're dependent.
Technically, when Sarah ordered the baby boys to be thrown into the river, it was an offering to their alligator
God,
gods.
right, your
Because
God,
the Nile was full of alligators.
right.
Right.
And so this was actually almost a spiritual ritual on their part, trying to stop the
Appease, right, that's what I'm talking, exactly.
plague, trying to prevent
The last verse here says, all the
Yeah.
countries came in unto Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn.
Yeah, the words
Because the
translated
famine
for the
was
faith
so
of the whole.
sore in all lands, it says. But this seems to suggest that this was pretty substantial.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
I mean, the word for the earth is literally just the word that could be earth or country, earth, field, ground, land,
Right.
nation,
Terra firma,
wilderness.
terra firma.
Yeah, so just whatever they knew at the time, at least.
The
But o-
unknown
But
world.
over all the face of the earth.
I mean, there's evidence to suggest that the then known world actually was the whole world. I mean, we've got evidence that the Egyptians have been on this continent.
Mhm.
You know, apparently in the Grand Canyon, there's all sorts of weird Egyptian artifacts there.
Well, we
Yeah,
know,
so-
we know by this time that their continents, there's some separation because of all the water.
Right.
But we know that
So-
the ancient Phoenicians were shipping,
Yeah, but they have shipping.
you know, but they
So
had
people-
big
Yeah.
ships.
People, it says, people are gonna have to come from quite a distance. Now, what could facilitate a famine like this?
What could cause it, you mean?
Yeah,
Global warming.
no, I mean, what could facilitate a famine like this?
You mean
A
what-
substantial
you mean
famine,
what could
maybe
cause
not the
it?
entire planet, but
Facilitate
most,
means to make it happen, but that's
So you mean
not what
cause it?
people are gonna use.
what's that?
You mean what would cause it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, God obviously caused it, but what facilitated it?
The next election.
Yeah, they hadn't elected a new pharaoh yet. They were waiting to pass it off on the Republicans and blame them for the famine.
Yeah.
Did they have a Fauci in Egypt?
Oh, brother, here we go.
Obedience to God.
Could have been,
I was just looking for the V word, that's all. I was looking for the V word.
Really?
Yeah,
Biden?
Huh?
What,
volcano,
Biden?
Oh,
volcanic eruption.
causing a nuclear winter essentially.
Yeah, basically, because this is an extended period of time. So if
I
you had a
mean,
couple
Let's
of
see what
volcanic
volcano
eruptions,
Well, I feel like with volcanic winter, typically you have like the sun being like darkened and everything, and that's like a lot more like, because like volcanic winter is it's raining ash for like a certain period of time.
right, but if you make the soil acidic, nothing's gonna grow.
Yeah, but also I feel like that would kind of be mentioned somewhere.
Nothing that's gonna be edible.
Well,
But-
also, I mean, like, I feel like it would be mentioned that God would have, people would have seen something like that and been like, and a great catastrophe happened, and like, this happened, that happened. I feel like it's more likely that just like, water and rivers were diverted or something, and whatever else, and obviously rain was held back, or like, God, because obviously
Well-
it says the east wind is in the dream, right? East wind. So
But that was
Mom-
just Mom said in the time of Elijah, that was, there was a kind of a drought. There've always been different
Not
periods of drought.
Yeah.
We have drought in our own country, here, et cetera.
Couple of
So it's
seasons.
not,
But it's not like it was in that
Unusual
time period
phenomena.
where it didn't rain at
but
all.
where it's drought over in this state, it might be raining over in Missouri or someplace. And they may get plenty of rain, but, and of course, that can be an issue too. So I think it was more in a situation where, of course, if anybody has ever been to Egypt, I know Scott has been there, he said, it's more of an arid, desert-like type of climate anyway.
It is
It's
now.
being
Yeah.
it's pretty warm year round.
It probably wasn't.
They
then,
don't
though.
get an incredible amount of rain. I've only heard that they've had snow there maybe one or two times in 50 years. I mean, it's.
well, what I was thinking was like, it talking about how in his dream he said that the east wind would blow on things like the corn and that kind of stuff in the dream. If it was just high winds that would push rain clouds to other states or to other places, stopping water, right? That would cause a drought as well if there was just a lot of different wind fronts coming in and pushing and blowing things away and moving things. It could also very well be that a volcano erupted and it would rain acid, and that would also
There may be a combination of things that can cause famine. There are lots of things that can cause famine, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, it may not have even been a drought where it wasn't raining either. It could have been a series of blights that destroyed all the crops.
insects,
locusts.
weather-related stuff. Could have been a combination of
I
a
know
bunch of
last
different
year,
things.
we had a piece of weather, it was really hard to get anything to grow.
Yeah, but Joseph almost gives the scripture
It'd be
almost gives the
interesting to see if
appearance.
it paralleled with the violation of more of the Shemitah type cycles too.
The Bible almost gives you the impression that there was like a light switch that was flicked after the 7 years of plenty. Well, we flipped the switch, now it's famine. So there was probably a transitional type of period.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, just because the Bible doesn't mention anything about catastrophe, volcanoes, or anything like that, or locusts or insects, because the Bible is always very clear when it mentions like, oh, an insects came and destroyed the land, or like a volcano erupted, yada yada. But what it makes me think of is if you have a huge amount of plentiful growing, the ground would have been depleted of all of its resources and minerals to make things actually grow and facilitate. So it's kind of like God said, here's all the minerals at once, way too early. And then it's taking 7 years to replenish those resources it used to do everything early. Almost is what it sounds like. Because
So
if you have bad soil, you're never going to grow anything, right? Your
it just
soil can be
runs
depleted.
all the nutritional value out of the soil for 7 years, and then
Possibly. If the fact was that they kept on having so much that they couldn't really handle it, that could have very well happened easily. Is that their soil just was like, well, we're completely depleted of anything that can make anything grow.
Well, that's what happened with the Dust Bowl. They kept planting the same
Yeah.
crops, and they never changed
It
it.
seems to be much more extensive. The thing is extensive, at least in that region, for hundreds of miles at least,
Our Dust
because
Bowl in the 1930s was hundreds of miles.
hundreds of miles, because again, we're talking about the development of the nation of Israel. And
Yeah.
so God has to get these 70 people that are very content to be where they are, pick them up and move them down to Egypt. Okay? They're not developing, move them down to Egypt.
Need to move to Egypt to survive.
And to a specific place in Egypt that is prolific for their development. You see, again, we're talking about God
Put them in an incubator.
putting these people in a place where they can grow into a mighty nation. Anyway,
It's
that'll
interesting that
that'll
the
pick up-
Egyptians didn't like shepherds,
right,
and
Right,
the
they did.
Israelites,
Were
the
shepherd
descendants,
people.
they were all shepherds.
right.
And
Yeah.
so they put them in a separate spot because they
Yeah.
didn't want anything to do with those people.
Yeah, they were the
Probably also for their initial protection, and preservation as a spiritual group and.
Well, I think God put them there for that purpose, but I don't know that Pharaoh put them there. I think Pharaoh said, okay.
Well, they
that's all
requested it.
They needed.
Joseph
this
told
spot.
them where to request.
yeah, that we'll pick that up next week. And
You know where the good
develop-
ones
As far as,
develop
add something to the numbers, they only took 20% of the harvest for the plenty years. And you think, is that really enough to feed not just Egypt, but the rest of the famine world for 7 years if they're only storing up 20% for each of the plenty years? Because it depends how you look at it, but you say 20% was the excess and Egypt ate the other 100% for those 7 years. Well, that at the end of 7 years would only give you 140% of what you would need in 1 year to feed Egypt. So they must have been having plenty that was like more than 200% of what they needed
Sure,
given
absolutely.
1 year. So that 20% collected per those 7 years would be enough to feed not only Egypt, but the rest of the famine world for an entire 7 years.
They built them.
Yeah, God was multiplying it. There's no question.
And also that, obviously Joseph began in his prominence at 30 years old and stayed prominent for 80 years because he dies at 110 at the end of chapter 50, the last book of Genesis. And Moses began his exodus of Israel out of Egypt when he was 80.
And he's
It's
80.
interesting that Joseph spent 80 years as a prominent man in Egypt, and then Moses led the people out of Egypt when he was 80.
Exactly. All about new start, new beginning. All right, so we'll pick it up next week, chapter 42. And for right now, we'll have Elijah just dismiss us in
Double
prayer.
7 thing there too.
Yeah.
All right. Father, we thank you so much for this wonderful day, for the sunshine after all the crazy amounts of rain that we were given. And And we thank you for all the blessings that you provide and the wonderful things you do for us, for your protection and everything else. We ask that you continue to guide us and help us to pattern ourselves after your likeness, to learn to be like you in all the ways that we possibly could, and that you would help us to prepare for the bountiful years and the years of famine as well. Give us wisdom to be wise servants and to be good stewards with things that you bless us with. We thank you for all the wonderful things as well as the food that we're going to eat together as a family. Ask that you bless it to empower us. We ask and pray in the name of your Son. Amen.
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 Okay, guys, we'll catch up with you. We ran a little over today, but it's okay. We'll catch up with you next week, same time, same place. Until then, the Lord's richest blessing upon all of you. Have a great week ahead.
You as well.
Right back at you, brother.
Yep. Take care.
Enjoy everybody's Sabbath.
Yeah.
Happy Sabbath.
Cinnamon, you gonna go get lunch?
It's way past lunch right now. Well, not way past lunch, but it's past lunch right now and stuff. And I have food in my room.
Oh, nice. What you should do is just maybe just work it out with them to go smuggle a little bit of food out
Hey.
before.
I can go to the fruit bar because now that they're not doing COVID stuff, I can go grab my own fruit and grab my own whatever.
What, do you got a green screen behind you, Scott?
No, he's at Sinai.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
there you go. There's Simon.
You just finished your 40-day fast?
I'm sinking into a hole here.
Yeah. That's funny.
You got a picture of Mount Sinai right there. He's dropped off.
Yeah.
Sinkhole of
That's it.
Sinai.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I think God opened that up for the wicked, didn't he?
It's crazy how that
Yes.
picture makes it look like Sinai is so small.
Location, Elijah. Nice try.
Where was that at?
That was Kadesh.
Kadesh,
Where the
yeah.
girl found out.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
way, I guess, or something
Or
like that.
rebellion, yeah.
It's amazing how small that picture makes Sinai look.
Yeah.
Or the Scott just has a big
Bit
head.
of a hike up there, believe me. Yeah, and
Oh, he's-
Elijah's
Yeah, he's been on top.
Have you been on top of Mount Sinai?
Yeah.
you're up there. You can't see my hand. Can't
Yeah.
point. Oh, wait.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Anyway, the cave of Elijah. Your cave is right here, Elijah. Right, tip of my finger, right there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you been in there?
Yeah, you need to go there and spend some time in your cave, Elijah.
Yeah, probably. Well, I don't know. God asked him what he was doing there. He said, "What are you doing here, man?"
He was chilling.
Please just let me die. And he said, "Nah. I'll take you with me, though." That worked out pretty well for him.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good, man.
All right. Take care, y'all.
Yeah, it was great to see you guys.
Okay.
Yeah. Have an awesome day, Cinnamon.
Yep. Thank you. All right, just hiking.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that'd be good.
I gotta go down to parkour and put an aux cord somewhere, and then I gotta go get my laptops out of the studio. Just
Oh,
clean up my
nice.
mess.
Yeah. That'd be excellent. I haven't told Elsa yet, but I'm planning on trying to come up there and visit for 4th of July.
It'd be very cool. I'll ask them what their policy is on visitors because Lizzie was thinking about trying to come down on 4th of July too.
Marty said it was cool. He said, "I can't provide housing, but I said,
Okay.
come visit." He said, "Cool."
Cool. So
But-
then it is cool, I guess, if Lizzie comes as well then.
Yeah, it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, if it's not for me to come, I can't imagine, for me to bring my wife and child, I can't imagine it would be a problem. So, yeah. Well, we'll keep posted on that, and I guess we'll see y'all later.
Yep.
We'll see you, Debbie.
See ya. God bless.
Yeah.
God bless. Happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.